How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another amazing installment of the Arcane Archive. Today we have another bit of a fan favorite, or at least we are choosing to believe it's a fan favorite because we enjoy doing this ourselves. What's on the docket for today's episode, Sammy?
Oh, we have another wonderfully mature, tame, just no bad things whatsoever. Some
No
cautionary
cringe.
chronicles.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no cringe
yeah.
whatsoever. It's the
Uh,
good old Cautionary Chronicles that we all know and love, you know. We've got some great, amazing stories for you guys today, none of which will provide any amount of traumatic, horrendous nightmares after the fact for me and Sam here. But you know, hey, if it does, just know we're sacrificing for you guys here and your edutainment. So, you know, we'd really appreciate it if you guys could like and comment on the videos, share and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. All that good stuff as always. But you know what? Without all of that, without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right up in here today. I can go ahead and take this first story, Sammy, if you don't mind. Starting us off, we've got a story that says DMs, let your players be good at things. And this, I feel like, is a topic that, again, Samuel and I hold near and dear to our hearts as well. If you haven't noticed in many of our previous videos explaining kind of the mechanics of D&D and the like, you know, this is a thing that we feel very strongly about ourselves. So let's see what the OP has to say. This is an old story from the mid-2010s, but I was reminded of it recently, so decided to share. I was playing D&D 5e when it was still slightly fresher of a game, and I made a bard since it's always been a favorite class of mine, and naturally maxed out charisma, took expertise in persuasion and deception, the whole shebang. It was the most basic overall bard build you could possibly imagine. No gimmicks, no tricks, just all finesse and charisma. So, DM, however, started to notice that expertise and charisma skills on a charisma class means I tended to roll well on persuasion. This meant my ability to work our team through social encounters was fairly high, and he decided that that was actually bad. And I noticed he stopped letting me ever roll for persuasion or deception on anything. He would always either just have the NPC stonewall my speaking, which is fine to do in general. Obviously, not every NPC can be swayed even by a nat 20. However, I would notice he intentionally would wait for the exact moment anyone else in the party spoke up to ask them to roll. One session, I made an offhand joke about persuasion basically becoming useless to me since I never get to roll it anymore. And the DM said completely straight-faced, yeah, why would I let you roll? Your bonus is so high you basically can't fail. So why give you the ability to anyways? I can't let you be good at it. Me, in response, says, but that's what I build my bard to do. GM, sorry, but I'm not letting you roll persuasion still. I didn't want to make any more of a fuss, but I do to this day still believe that this is not a good mindset to DM with. Yes, obviously you should challenge players and not exclusively play into their strengths all the time. Targeting a weakness is something that can happen too sometimes. But let your players actually do what they built their character to do in post. Again, I feel like this particular guy is exceedingly reasonable in all that he is saying. It's like, yeah, again, I'm sure any GM that's worth their salt who has ever played with a bard or a rogue like knows, like, yeah, when you put, you know, skill checks there, it is exceedingly difficult, especially once they get higher on in levels, for them to fail a skill check. Barring, of course, if they are not an infamously low roller like I am, then it's like, it doesn't really matter either way. It is still a thing where it's like, yeah, okay. If you put a skill check, they have a person who is good at this thing. But that's their thing. That's what they're supposed to be good at. A bard, they are one of the few skill monkey classes in 5th edition. That is literally their bread and butter. They are okay at combat. You know, they can be great supports, great controllers, great healer, you know, decent healers and stuff, but they're not necessarily going to be like the biggest one that shines during combat normally. Exploration, they'd also, you know, some of their spells can be particularly helpful for exploration a little bit, but not a ton. Like, they're not like a ranger or a druid. You know, they don't really have a lot of that more natural or environmentally supportive spells most of the time. They are legitimately built predominantly for roleplay, for social interaction. All of their abilities and spells usually support that exponentially so. And so you have to let them be good at what they're good at. Don't deliberately shut down their shit and take it away from them just because it's inconvenient for you, or because like, what do you think, Sam?
I mean, like the reality is like even though you get quote unquote these great skill levels and you know you get better as the time goes on, things are supposed to get harder anyway. It's the way that skills work in this game is that you should be able to do these certain things easy now, right? You know, convincing people to be friends at a bar at level 20 is going to be the easiest thing in the world for a bard to do.
It's not impossible to
Now,
fail.
now the reality is like just because they use charisma, you also, as a DM, are the one that's letting them get away with things that doesn't make sense. If you have to keep them from rolling, it means that they're getting through encounters using just charisma in a way that it doesn't work in every encounter. You can't befriend everything you meet. You can't convince every bad person to be a good person. So you're letting them get away with stuff you aren't comfortable with is kind of how I feel.
The OP literally says that. He's literally like, hey, it's fine to do in general because obviously not every NQBC can be swayed even by a nat 20. So, but here's the issue though, right? Because it's like he just doesn't want them necessarily to succeed. That's the problem, because he still gives other players the chance to roll. Just not him, because he's basically guaranteed to succeed apparently. And so it's like, okay, but that's the point. That's how he's going to have fun with the game. He's going to be able to roll this check to potentially succeed at what he's good at.
Well, and there's something I think we also have to, I think, touch on. In games that I play, if you're not the one talking, you don't get to make the charisma roll. So any character, even if you don't have a high charisma score, if you believe in a conversation and you're talking to them and you're trying to convince them of something, you're going to roll. So I will also say, like, this DM is still probably keeping him from rolling, even if this person is
he is the one talking most of it.
Yeah.
He even says he only calls for roll after someone else starts to talk as well.
Yeah, that's not good. But the reality is, like, yeah, the DM obviously has something against this, but they're also the one making the mistake of letting things happen that they're not comfortable with. So my thing is maybe give them a chance, like talk to them about it, give them a chance. But if they don't change their ways, like I wouldn't continue to play with that group if that's going to be, because like you're taking off an entire pillar of interaction for a character because they're good at it. Do we keep the fighter? Do we keep the fighter from fighting enemies? I was
gonna say there's some great comments down below that literally says that exact same thing. Literally the top voted comment is, why would I ever allow the fighter to swing his sword when I know he's likely to hit his target? That's ridiculous. Down below, it's like, but those arrows can hit from so far away. All I'm saying is that it's clearly a rules oversight that they let the ranger have a bow. I'm just balancing things out. Like, that's that in a nutshell isn't right there. It's like, if you're going to ban the rogue from doing rogue stuff, from doing skill checks, you're going to ban the bard from doing social checks, and you might as well ban the fighter from fighting. You might as well keep the barbarian from raging. You might as well keep the wizard from casting spells. Like, and the irony is people do that. That's the funny part. People literally will do that. There are some GMs who will be like, yeah, your spellcasters, no, you don't get any spells. You can only cast these spells. You can't get other spells. Like, you're not going to be able to learn more spells. You can't do that. And it's like, what? Like, and again, okay, I get it. You know what? Sometimes you can run games however you want, right? If you don't want magic in your game, I personally am not going to play in it. I think that's ridiculous. I do not like the sound of that in any way, shape, or form at all to me. This is a fantasy game, and I'm like, I want that magic. You guys know I love magic. I'm always inclined and have a specific proclivity for magic. But I get it. Some people are like, you know what? I want to run a more mundane type of game, you know, and have a thing for marshals and do that thing or whatever. And then even to that, though, I'm still like, I would still want my martial classes to perform more like superheroes, like have super feats of super strength and dexterity and agility and all whatever, and constitution, you know. But it's like, okay, You know, fine. Do play what game you want to play. I can't judge that. I'm not gonna play in it though. And that's fine. But it's also just like, again, if you are allowing these classes to be in the game, I have never been a fan of you trying to arbitrarily, especially arbitrarily, change things up because you don't feel like it's not working for how you want to play. And it usually comes across like you aren't able to screw over the party enough for you to feel comfortable and good. Like so many GMs, again, have that hostile or that GM versus player mentality.
The antagonistic DM.
Exactly. The GM versus player mentality, where it's like you are trying to work with them. You should want your party to succeed. You shouldn't want them to fail. Like again, like the OP even says, yes, you can challenge your party. That is good. Okay? There should be that sense of like, hey, you are not guaranteed to win. You know, the potential for loss, for death, like that is a thing. Your character can potentially die, and that is okay. But you should especially want to help them to succeed, though. That is a possibility, yes.
But it shouldn't
be a thing that you are deliberately trying to manipulate and to push to being the most likely outcome, right? It's like you again, like for me, I always want my players, I want them to be cool. I want them to be badass. I also, if I love their characters, if I love the characters they brought in, no, I don't want their characters to die. But I'm not going to hold back in a combat encounter either. I'm going to attack. I'm going to do what makes sense for the monsters or the enemies they're facing. And I'm not going to necessarily be overtly merciful. Like if I feel like but I absolutely give them plenty of support. I'm like, you know what? That was cool. You'll get inspiration for that because that was a badass thing you did, and that can help you later on down the line.
Not to say that there isn't a time to be merciful. I feel like there are times where if you're telling a story and everyone's having fun and like, you know, it's just a bad day, people roll like shit, and you're like, dude,
it's not fun.
If we fail here, everyone dies. Like there can still be consequences.
Yeah,
but you know, not everything has to be in dire straits all the time, which is fine. Like as a someone who plays D&D as a player, not really as a DM very often, it's one of those things like I've had encounters where it's like if you lose here, it's TPK. If you do this, it's TPK. Like you know it, you can feel it. It's in the wind, like you know. And there's also encounters where you're like, even if we were to fail here, but it feels good to succeed. And so like there's different levels to it, and I think, you know, part of being a GM is figuring out when it's appropriate to have those different
absolutely
different standards
and you can't always get it right. Even the best GMs are still gonna make mistakes sometimes.
Like, I had one recently that like I don't. Again, I've like I tried to explain this to him. He didn't really get it. I talked to another friend of mine that we play with, and I explained to him like the decisions he made. If we didn't figure out a loophole, he created an unavoidable TPK that he didn't even realize he created.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's ever going to understand that that's what he did. He literally put us in a side mission that we didn't even want to have anything to do with to put us in line for a TPK for no reason to the story. So why? He might not see it the way that we see it, but the reality is looking at what was put in front of us, it was literally a TPK for no reason. Like you can have like, you know, there's the whole your parties being terrible, boulders fall and kill everyone, but like when you throw something in a party with no consequence to the story, no interaction necessary, no real reasoning behind it, and you're like, this is gonna kill all of you. Like that's not really.
I mean, that we talked about that I think in a previous Cautionary Chronicles with the whole dragon scenario, dude. And it's just like, here's the thing. I think we've also talked in a previous video too about like you can absolutely give your players like an encounter where they're not necessarily supposed to defeat the thing.
Yeah.
They're not powerful enough to beat the enemy, but you always have to give them a way to still accomplish the encounter. That's the point of an encounter. It's not supposed to be an encounter that they can't do anything. The encounter needs to be able to be succeeded or failed. It can't, and you have to have both, because otherwise you're just like, well, why are you doing it? Like you might as well just make it a cutscene
Yeah,
where they're just done
that's the
anyway.
other thing.
Like it's just a cutscene, and it's like, look,
It's
give a
unfortunate.
reason for what you're doing. And it's okay to be like, hey, yeah, sometimes maybe you got to check the party. Sometimes you maybe got to be like, yo, you guys are powerful, but you can't just go around doing anything that you want because there are still other more powerful people than
Yeah.
you here. And you
Or
can
I mean,
throw a particularly powerful individual at them. But then that's the thing. You have to give it the ability for them to escape and succeed by getting away. It's not meant
yeah.
to destroy them. It's
Yeah.
meant to, again, just humble them and
I
give
mean,
them stakes and
hey,
risk.
there's if the consequence of their actions throughout a campaign is a physical and metaphorical brick wall that they either kill or die, I get it. There's a time and place for depending on what your party has done. If they made choices knowing things would get worse, or
Yeah,
you gave them clues and evidence like,
exactly. And at
hey,
that point, it's out of your
it's out of your hands.
responsibility. It's out of your hands.
They made that decision over and over again. They didn't take you seriously, whatever reason, then it's fine. And I think there's a place for that in D&D. There is a place for people to get humbled for their decisions. And it doesn't mean that there's still not an out, but like
No,
if realistically speaking, your plan was to have them win or you kill them, sometimes that is the end of a story. And that's okay.
sometimes, and that happens.
But
But again, it was
but
at
doing
least
it
a natural, organic
yeah,
progression.
but doing it for no reason, doing it with no real build up, I think to me is a little strange and definitely speaks to inexperience or just general apathy for a situation. But well, yeah,
It's
that's
just,
unfortunately
I mean,
someone who
it's
doesn't
just,
seem to
I
know how to
just,
run a game like D&D.
that's what I mean. It's like, it's just like, it's a thing where it's the GM versus player mentality. I never understand. And I always hate it because it's just like, this is a game for everybody. It's a literal cooperative storytelling game. And that means everyone, even the GM. And it's also a thing too for like players, don't have a player versus GM mentality. Don't think that like your GM is always going to constantly screw you over or that you have to constantly like destroy or take out any NPC or you're always constantly like paranoid about the GM trying to do something or the GM is trying to like, if you're being disruptive or if you're maybe doing something that isn't conducive, then GM's like, I'm not letting you do that, or hey, we're doing this, and you're like, well, you're taking away my autonomy. You're not letting me play my character. Like you're taking away my free will. It's like, no, not necessarily. The GM might be again trying to legitimately take you to a like they set up a campaign, right? And if it's more of a linear plot, if it's not more of a free open sandbox kind of thing, then you have to go along with the plot. Like that's the other side of it is like with players who make characters who are like resistant and rejecting going along with the story to play the game. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, the you guys are gonna investigate a haunted house in there. And your player's like, well, my character's not gonna go in there. That's dumb. And it's like, but that's what the campaign is. That's what the session is. It's
Yeah.
going to investigate a haunted house. How can you say you're not gonna go in there when that's the campaign? Make a different character then. Like you can't, how
Well,
can we play the game then?
there's always the instance of there's always the one kid who stays outside the haunted house because he doesn't want to go in, but as soon as something happens, they run in anyway, and
Yeah.
that's fine as a character show. Like you can 100% do that. That's okay, but it's with the understanding that
You're going to have
you
to
still interact. You
participate
still
at some
interact.
point.
Because if we go through a whole session in a haunted house and you don't even go in once, then we're just gonna retire your character.
That's what I mean. Like
Sorry, but like
again,
you have to play something different. Because
players
I can't have someone who's just not willing to participate at the table.
players do not make characters that do not have any reason to be or stay with the party. This is a thing we've talked about before. You have to make characters that have a reason to go with the party and the story. You can't just have it be a lone wolf, like I don't play by anyone else's rules. I don't team up. I do my own thing. Like that's not how it works. You can have a player, or you can have a character who maybe had that mentality before, but you have to give them a legitimate reason to stay with the party and work with them at some point, and some point soon. But with that being the case, I do believe we can go ahead on and move to the next story for this afternoon. I do believe we are going next with
I
they
mean,
took Which
Yeah.
one did you want to do? Yeah,
Oh yeah, you
they
knew.
took the nails out while you were downstairs. Go
Yeah,
ahead and take
I
it,
was gonna
Sammy.
continue right into another instance of a DM not knowing how to play D&D.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so this story involves a DM who A doesn't understand or like question mark the basic rules of D&D, and B made up the funniest annoying AF at the time excuse I think I've ever heard from a DM before. Should note that this DM is a very experienced player for many years and has ran multiple one-shots before. They are not new. Basically, we're doing a keys from the Golden Vault heist, and we were tasked with taking a painting from the Thieves Guild inside their HQ, which is in a manor. Two important details were revealed when I and another player asked/made rolls about the manor. The windows were boarded up, and the balcony over the main entrance is 30 feet high, where a guard was standing. Here are the cliff notes. The party set the stables on fire and let a tiger loose in there as well. Big distraction idea.
All right.
Kind of a
Yeah.
strange combo, but fine. When the
Hey, if it gets the
balcony,
job
yeah.
done.
When the balcony guard ran away, we went inside and fought 4 guys pretty easily with only one person getting hit. Cool. You're taking them out, Thieves Guild style. Found a
Yeah.
secret entrance to a
Assassin's
basement.
Creed, maybe.
Right. Found a secret entrance to a basement and fought one swarm of piranhas and found nothing else in the literal labyrinth of a basement. Okay, so already there's problems there. It's a basement in Thieves Guild.
A little bit, yeah.
Came back up the stairs and found the door we were entered in was now locked. Surprise. 2 enemies were waiting outside. Why did they lock the door, though? Fair.
Or how can they lock it from outside?
Yeah, if it's a secret door, like it just seems a little strange. It's already weird. Mind you, the manor is now on fire. All of this is happening while the house is about to be burned down. We incapacitate the big enemy before it had a turn. We nabbed 2 nat 20s out of it as well before it got a turn. I'm assuming that just means they crit twice before the thing even went to go.
Yeah.
Or they had some sort of way to cancel a natural 20, whatever it was. Guildmaster walks in the door behind us and throws the tanned pelt of the tiger we sent in earlier at us. I jokingly mock the fact that tanning and skinning would have taken a much longer time than the 1 hour we were downstairs, but the DM doesn't respond. You literally could have just thrown
the corpse. You could have thrown the corpse.
Even if you wanted to make a statement
or a claw maybe a patch of fur, the tail. He could have thrown
the head.
The head would have made even more sense. There's so many more ways.
The fact that the dude went with skinned and tanned. If you just went skinned, it would have been fine.
I mean, even skinned,
because it doesn't.
Bit...
Even if you took like the back half of a tiger and you just
it would have just made the most sense to throw the head of the tiger.
Sure.
Cut off the head. You have it right there. You throw it.
What's it called?
That's the most iconic thing. It would have
mob style. Just throw that head in there.
There you go.
So the DM did not respond to that, which already shows me that the DM doesn't have a grasp on real life things.
Well, he is clearly getting frustrated with how everything has, because he did not expect this to be what happened.
The locked door with 2 people outside of it that is supposed to be a hidden door already doesn't make sense. The fact that there was no
no loot down in a labyrinthine of a guild, of a thieves guild.
It's just the basement, and I'm assuming he described it as labyrinthine because it was huge and confusing.
He's just literally being petty as hell right now.
Here's another good part. Next, the balcony guard, 30 feet up, jumps down from the balcony to shoot an arrow at us. I ask, so didn't he take 66?
It's 3d6. Yeah. He did edit it. He did it.
Damage and fall prone since he leaped from the 30-foot balcony. Now, again, you don't necessarily fall prone. You have to make a dex save, but doesn't matter.
You don't normally, if you take damage from falling, you then do fall prone.
Oh, really? I thought you could save.
People say that because it's more fun that way.
Oh, okay.
But the technical ruling of it is if you fall like enough to take damage from it, then you will fall prone. But I do feel like it makes sense to allow an acrobatics check or a dex save, because otherwise it's like, because people do that all the time, right? People can jump 2 stories high and roll out of it. So that makes sense and that's fair. But technically with the rules, if you take damage, you will fall prone.
And the DM then said, I guess if we're playing by the rules, then no, he wouldn't do something as stupid as that. My man just jumped from a balcony. What do you mean?
Yeah, like what? What do you mean we're playing by the rules?
Like, this is another example of a DM who wants to tell a story, not play a game. Next.
Well, but here's the thing. Yes, you can do that, but just know that the guy's gonna take some damage. That like it's 3d6 damage. You could roll ones on all those d6s, and he takes 3 points of
Also,
damage.
there's an easier way to do this. In the amount of time you were inside, the guard could have tied a rope to the balcony and slid down the rope. Like, it's 30 feet. It's not that hard. That's not as tall as the ropes we climbed in gym class as like fifth graders. You could slide down a rope and not take the damage, and it would be still cool as hell. He could shoot you with a crossbow while sliding down a rope.
Well, I mean, it might be a little less cool than like jumping in the air and like doing a freeze frame, whatever. But my point being is, you can make that happen. That's fine. He'll take 3d6 damage. At least he'll take 3 points of damage. At most, he'll take 18 points of damage.
Yeah,
it's like, okay, but. Like, again, you can also do the dex save or the acrobatics check thing that we say before, where that helps mitigate the damage. You might still take the damage, but it'll be like you take half damage and you don't fall prone.
I don't want to be that guy. Why is he not just shooting you from the balcony?
I make the assumption because
they're like inside or something.
Yeah, they're technically inside the manor. So if he's at the balcony, he might not be able to like shoot at them from his position.
So my thought process is, if he saw you guys go in, why wouldn't he just go through the building like a normal
coming
guard?
Down around? Yeah,
it just doesn't make any sense.
I assume again the GM wasn't thinking of that, and he was trying to get coolness factor along with it, and he didn't because he's feeling petty and he's getting frustrated right now, and he's not thinking well. But please do continue, Sammy.
Yeah. So the big bad guy who we crit twice uses Cone of Cold on us.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Which, most likely, why is he a spellcaster if he's a big bad guy in the Thieves Guild? But I digress. So what?
Hey, subversion of expectations.
Yeah.
Why not?
I mentioned. So what did the Guildmaster roll? Cone of Cold is a 60-foot cone, and she's right behind me. The DM spends about 2 minutes figuring out how to move Cone of Cold so he doesn't damage the enemy he's placed with the spell he casts.
Yeah.
Finally, near the end of round 1, the boarded up windows are broken into by like 4 guards. I asked the DM, so they used their action to do that, right? You said the windows were boarded up. The DM, with no hint of irony or sarcasm, says blank face, well, they took the nails out of the boards while you guys were downstairs and placed them back in the windows so they could walk through. So okay. Dead silence, as everyone is obviously stun-locked around the heap of logic we were just served. But man, in hindsight, it's so funny. Mind you, this all happened while the
manor was catching fire from the stable fire.
The skinning and tanning, the locking of the door, the removal of nails and placing boards back into place. Yeah, we'll do this while our HQ is on fire. Thanks for reading. TLDR, the DM makes really goofy decisions for his NPCs while the house is on fire and claims that while the party was in the basement, the NPCs managed to unnail boards and place them perfectly back in place to fool us into thinking they were boarded up while the house was on fire. So, again, the top comment, which I love. To be fair, my boy Chad jumped off a balcony in college and made it to the Waffle House after theirs, so no way he had 66 hit points to lose before the jump. And then someone responded with level 1 wizard of the School of Fraternities cast Featherfall as he jumped. Now, here's the reality. This is an obvious case of a DM having a story and the party circumvents every expectation that they had. Now, albeit their story was obviously very poorly written because none of the stuff that the party talked about is crazy. Like making a distraction, ambushing people in a manner like, so you wanted them to go into a place and steal something, but you filled it with enemies, and you're surprised when their first instinct, if they can't sneak through, because it's obvious that you made it so they wouldn't be able to completely sneak through, they go straight for subdue. To me, it's not a leap of logic, and to be honest, it sounds like they did a really good job until you put bullshit in their way for no reason.
Everything seemed to go off nicely. Also, just one last comment about this wizard of school fraternities. His featherfall is literally flavored with him just being drunk and going limp as he falls down. That's what that is. I just had to throw that in there because that was funny. But continuing back specifically.
Oh, this is perfect, Adam. This is perfect. Sounds like he ran into a wall trying to play that scene out.
Yeah. Like
unlikely. He moved the cement and put the bricks back so he could. All right. Someone's a real comedian.
We had a chronology wizard come in here to turn back time to when the cement was liquid so he could walk through it, and then he fast forward time to re-harden it behind him.
It really is good because, like, realistically speaking, using their actions to break down those barricades would have made for a cinematic fight.
I was gonna
Like
say
you're fighting this thing, and all of a sudden, like boom, the windows start getting
it would take time. It would be like you have not only is the freaking
house on fire.
manor on fire, you also now have to deal with these individuals or these enemies in a quick time, a limited amount of time before your situation gets exponentially worse.
Yeah.
You are on a time limit. You are on a clock right now. As they're like kind of breaking through, like, and it's like, hey, it's like, initiative count of 20. You roll a dice to see how much damage the other like Thieves Guild people do to the walls and the windows to get through. Say it has like 100 points of damage. Okay, we'll see how long the Thieves Guild member probably has what, like,
I guess for me
1d6 for like a scimitar or a dagger.
Again, why would they all do to different windows? Like you could just have two
Well,
of them work on the same window.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you could increase the dice pool by like how many dudes are all at once. Like we'll say like you could have maybe 3 guys or maybe only 2 guys per window, right? Like depending on how big a window is, you have 2 guys on opposite ends, like trying to pull the window, the boards off the window. Okay.
For me, the reality is even the way that they did it doesn't make sense, because why are they trying to break the windows into their own HQ? Don't they have a way to get in? Isn't there?
Well, I mean, the guild master walked in already. Why aren't they following behind the guild master
why are they
who came in from outside? Like he again,
it doesn't. None of it makes sense.
He clearly he wanted to do some coolness factor. He was clearly like he wanted to have some cool. I assume he wanted it to be almost like, in movies or shows where you have like, the guild, the main leader walk in. He throws the pelt or whatever, and then he has like his ninja SWAT boys burst in from the windows, do flips, and like land like down next to him in like a cool, dramatic way. But the unfortunate truth is the mechanics of the game, based off of his own personal descriptions of the manor, restrict that.
You know what? Also, what would be super easy if you wanted to give it this aesthetic of like a boarded up old manor. You can describe the wood as rotting, and dilapidated,
putrid,
and like
messed up.
No offense,
it would be easy to break.
No offense. I could see a normal sized fighting human being swing down on a rope and go right through rotted wood, and it would be cool. No one would argue.
They could do a breach. It could do a and again, cool. He literally already showed that apparently some of these guild members are magic users, which is fair. They don't all have to be rogues, or if they are rogues, they could be arcane tricksters, but they could also be wizards. They could be sorcerers. They could be warlocks. So cast magic to blow open the side of the wall or something.
I think this is also an instance of a DM like sticking too hard with what they said. Because like if someone's like, "Oh, are they boarded up?" and if he was worried like, "Oh, they're gonna break in through the windows," so yeah. But like the reality is like, why do you care? You gave them multiple points of ingress anyway. So like just make them rotted, and that way your cool thing can go off without a hitch, and they can use it if they want to. Like I think.
Well, here's the thing.
Have to do it the way I want you to do it, because you can't adapt your scenario.
Well, I mean, that was the funniest thing, where it's literally like he himself screwed himself over with that.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Half of this was himself screwing himself.
Mostly it was almost entirely him screwing himself, because he's the one who was like, wait, isn't it boarded up? And instead of just literally saying like, yeah, but the boards themselves were kind of rotted, dilapidated, or whatever, or he could even say some of them weakened from the fire even spreading to them or whatever. He was like, oh no, they undid the nails and then did the nails, but it's like they undid
the nails and then stacked the boards. Because there's no way you could possibly.
That was your explanation. You could have said almost anything else, which would have made way more sense. Why choose that?
Remember when we had that argument about move earth and a stone wall?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like that, except like 4 leagues below the sea in terms of stupidity.
Yeah.
Like we actually had genuine points. This dude just doesn't have a way to solve any problems in front of him, which is weird. Because like, how do you play D&D without problem solving skills? Like I've had friends that play the game that maybe he does
have problem solving skills, but he clearly has no improvisational skills. That's what it is. He has no improv skills. He got frustrated. He wanted to do some cool, dope stuff because he expected this to go a completely different way, and he wanted to show off his badass, cool Thieves Guild. And the party shut a lot of that shit down right away. like again, they set the barn on fire or the stables on fire. They let a tiger loose in there or wherever else. They
Yeah.
came in Assassin's Creed style, like murked a whole squad of his boys instantly from coming in. So he didn't even have the time to like display how cool they were with that. He was just like, oh, okay. And then they go find the hidden compartment, go down into the basement, and he's like, you don't find anything down there because you didn't work it. You didn't earn that reward.
Well,
You
I
don't get
think
to just yeah. And then he came back up. Yeah, they locked the door on you guys. Ha! We
I think
unlocked
for
the
me
door, or we picked the lock. Well, okay. There are two guys waiting for you on the other side of the door. Ha ha! We
the
take
part
them
that
out.
makes me laugh is like if you're a DM who writes something and this encounter is supposed to be dangerous and like it's a big deal that these PCs are going to fight this thieves guild, right? You know, they've terrorized the town. They're supposed to be big, dangerous people, and your PCs wipe the floor with them. That should be turned around when they go back to town. Everyone knows they did it, and they're like, I can't believe you did like that was so they were so
Well, they don't
powerful
want
and
that
scary. Like,
though.
but like that would be a better way to use your
I
time
agree. I 100%
to,
agree.
to then show your players that
Support.
like, no, you weren't supposed to be this good at it. You were proficient
Support
beyond
your
my
party's
expectations.
successes.
Yeah.
Reward your party's success. If
Yeah.
they did really good, if they're having fun, like
Let them
that's
do
the thing. But
good.
again, that's the thing. That GM, he wanted to do good himself. He wanted to
Yeah.
basically be like, oh, I did good because I challenged you guys, or I did really cool things with my characters, with my like NPCs that I made. It's not like, but it's for the party though too. Like you set this encounter up and they did really great at it. Let them feel good. Join them in feeling good, being like, hey, that was awesome, you guys. Holy crap. That's great.
Yeah.
And it's like, but
I,
so many GMs are just like, unless I get to do the cool things and be the cool whatever, then if I'm not having fun and I need to manipulate the world in order for me to feel like I'm being badass.
yeah. I
You you're the GM. You can literally make any badass person you want. It's fine. But the point is to have your players feeling badass too. That is your primary job.
I do love we'll end it with a comment here that I found that I love. And my players gave me funny looks one time when I tried to justify why there was a kraken in the river. Doesn't look so ridiculous now, does it, guys? Like it's because I feel like in every game, whether you're a good DM, bad DM, you've done it forever, you've never done it before, there is always going to be an instance of something kind of goofy, and that I
Yeah,
think
and
comes with the territory a bit. And I think that
we're playing imaginary
there's
elves, dwarves, fairies, and
yeah,
magic.
like there is a time where you can kind of let it slide and be like, well, this is just how wacky things are. But when it's so detrimental and so antagonistic is when you have to call it out. But if it's not, then like it's just goofy. And if you don't like that it's goofy all the time, talk to your DM about it. Maybe they don't realize how goofy it is. I think genuinely some people just don't realize. They just want everyone to have fun. They think this is
Yeah,
fun.
they're just having a
This
good time. And again, like I said,
this isn't
I
that, but
absolutely assuage to the rule of like, you know what? I'm a huge subscriber to the rule of cool.
yeah.
If this is a cool thing to do, I'm willing to work with you to try and figure it out. No, I'm not necessarily going to completely, obscure or destroy or throw away with more, baseline mechanics and rules of the game. But again, like we just said, like Sam, like you believed, when you jump from a high height, depending on how high it is, it's like you can roll a dex save or an acrobatics check to help mitigate the damage you'll receive from jumping. It'll be like, oh hey, and then you also won't fall prone. But if you fail that check, you'll take the full damage and you'll fall prone. Like that's just a fair kind of thing. That's
Oh
like
yeah.
like
I always
because
in my
it
head.
is cool to jump. It's
Well,
cool.
I
It's
guess in my head I thought, well, if I'm proficient with a skill, I'll take the damage.
yeah.
I don't have no problem taking full damage, right? What my thought process was if I'm an athletic or acrobatic dude, I'll take the damage, but I don't want to go prone. Like I feel like that's
Yeah.
fair because I'm proficient. But if you ask like Joe Schmo with he has 13 decks and he doesn't have a proficiency in acrobatics to jump from a second story building, the dude's gonna bust his ass. But he's going to
That's
survive. He'll
that's
get
what
up
I
and
mean.
walk
Like
the
I
next
was gonna
round,
say,
but
usually but that's also kind of the funny of it, right? I mean, they showcase that in shows and movies all the time, where you have the more nimble, agile individual who's able to jump, roll dexterously around, and then you have the big burly dude who's just like, oh, and just falls down.
yeah, he
And
just hits
that's
the ground.
okay. And because you have more hit points to take that damage. And again, 30 feet, it's 3d6 damage. The lowest amount of damage you'll take is 3 points. The highest is 18. You'll survive. You're fine. Especially again, if you want to do something cool, if you want if you have no other option and you need to just run away, you need to jump out of a window or off a balcony to get away from people, that's still cool too. And even more so, I feel like, again, the rule of cool, let them potentially mitigate it. Because again, like we said, in the real world, you can jump from 2 stories high and not take any real damage from that. Like that's a thing. You can literally roll as you jump off of a balcony on the ground and you're fine. There is no real damage that you took. So realistically speaking, it is not unfair or unrealistic or illogical to allow your players to make a dex save or an acrobatics check to either like reduce the damage that they take and not go prone, or maybe even sometimes completely mitigate it entirely to be immune to it entirely as they roll. I would just say it would depend on how high up, obviously, they are doing it. If you jump again from 60 feet up, it doesn't matter what you roll. Like, you're gonna take that full bit of damage. Like, maybe I might let you not fall prone, maybe, but even like 60 feet up, 66 damage, like, yeah, I don't know about that. That's pretty high up for you to like maybe not fall prone, unless, of course, again, you have an ability that allows you not to do that, like with the slow fall or the feather fall. Obviously, at that point, you're not going to take any damage. You won't fall prone anyway. But from 60 feet up, if you want to try and just like jump 60 feet, I'm like, I don't know if I can let you just roll out of that one. I don't know if that's a roll out of that one kind of scenario. But yeah, with that, I think we can go ahead and move on to our next one. This one, just word of warning for y'all. It's got a bit of a violence and kind of a sadistic trigger warning thing. It's a bit nasty and gross. This is far less jovial than the other two have been. So just again, a bit of a warning for you guys here, but for violence and such and gore. But the title of this one is Two More Was Too Many, and We Need a Screening Process. This is going to be a long one too, y'all. So as the OP literally says, all right, this is going to be a long one. It's my second one and the more recent example I have, and it was an annoying process which I took entirely too long to remedy, and I really didn't handle it as well as I could have. Had I acted sooner, my group may have avoided the drama that unfolded. Let me begin by explaining the group. I'm not going to use anybody's actual names, obviously, and I won't be using people's character names to avoid confusion. We're playing D&D 3.5, and I started the group as part of a Halloween-themed adventure in Castle Ravenloft. The game had cleared the main module, and within a year had elevated to a multiversal exploration. The group changed a few times during this time, but finally settled into a core of 4 key players. My friend Leo was an orc paladin. My wife was a Hinjokai oracle. My buddy Zed was a human fighter, and Zed's friend Mac was a human sorcerer. Leo was a longtime friend of mine and has been in so many of my games since 2E. And Zed has never played a TTRPG before in his life. The group worked out remarkably well, and we had a pretty good thing going. By the time the party was about level 11, my wife told me that her cousin had expressed an interest in playing D&D. She had room for another player in the group dynamic, but I asked my wife I'm sorry. She had a basic grasp of the rules and was looking for a group to play with. I really didn't think we had the room for another player in the group dynamic, but I asked my wife if she thought her cousin was a good fit, and she said that she was. She came over in the next game night, and I helped her with her character while the rest of the party spent the session recapping and doing some shopping in town. This girl also brought her boyfriend along, which I can't help but notice that was not previously discussed, seemingly. Give me a minute to describe this girl. She was 19 years old, very friendly and bubbly, but she suffered from mild autism. Not a problem, because my wife and I are also both high-functioning autistic ourselves. But while we taught ourselves strategies for dealing with it and educated ourselves on social cues, this girl had grown up never needing to deal with it, apparently. She clearly couldn't read people's body language, loved gory horror movies, had weird sexual proclivities, and didn't understand when it was and wasn't appropriate to talk about them in mixed company. I'm going to call her Kathy for purposes of the story. Kathy's boyfriend, however, wasn't that bad. He didn't have any experience playing the game, but he was mild and quite a bit more grounded than his girlfriend. He was a little weird, but all of us were weird too, so that wasn't a problem. I'm going to call him Dion. Kathy was a moon elf ranger, and Dion was a draconian sorcerer. For the sake of time and space, I'm going to list some of the weird stuff that Kathy frequently did to derail RP sessions. Warning, it's very NSFW. Stopped a funeral procession to harvest the lungs from the to-be-interred corpse. Removed the kidneys from a gnome shopkeeper that she deleted because he refused to sell her an item. Tried to feed the kidneys to the gnome's wife and daughter. Set a building on fire because a small child inside was unsettled by her. Castrated an orc after a combat session and made it jerky out of the genitals. Made every attempt to feed said jerky to every NPC she encountered. Explained in detail why she was naked and didn't have anything in her inventory apart from a knife and also apparently testicle jerky. Tried to seduce a lich in the middle of combat. Asked to borrow 5,000 gold from a party member to buy a known cursed item from an NPC and did not take no for an answer. Tried pushing Zed's character into a deadly clockwork machine because she thought it would be funny. Made finger puppets from a couple of pixies. And I just want to take this moment to say, the OP specifically, this was all in just one session. She even did a whole bunch of strange things IRL that bordered on violating other people's personal space. So I keep telling her that the behavior is inappropriate and telling her to tone it back because she was interrupting people and making them uncomfortable. She just seemed to shut off every time I told her. And she would back off but didn't acknowledge, only to reoffend again. Even her boyfriend tried reeling her in. It's worth noting, however, my wife had a family function the next day, so she left the game early to go to bed. So she only saw about a quarter of what she did. Leo texted me the next day expressing that Kathy made him very uncomfortable and asked if I could talk to her or take her aside before the next session and explain that behavior was making him and Mac uncomfortable. Almost at the exact same time, I got a text from Mac saying basically the same exact thing. So I decided to call her and try to communicate this as soon as possible. She did not seem receptive, but said that she understood. The next week, Kathy and Dion show up and we all get settled into play. My wife did not play this time because she had to work. What follows is the ensuing list of shenanigans. 1, she punched an NPC trying to keep her from throwing one of Zed's swords into a portal. 2, suggested we harvest the stomach of the NPC after they were deleted by the monster that came out of said portal. 3, tried to seduce said monster. 4, tried punching Leo when he tried to stop her from stealing another sword from Zed. 5, tried to seduce Zed's character. 6, defecated on the NPC's corpse when Zed refused the advance. 7, was punched by Mac's character to stop her from trying to steal Leo's sword that he was holding. Now, the whole time, Dion, Mac, and I are chiding her for all this, and it just kept falling on deaf ears. We only got about halfway done of what I set out to do that session, and I ended it almost 2 hours early. After everyone left, I got more texts from the other players about this girl's behavior. I replied that I tried my best, but wasn't getting through to her. I decided that I would try to get my wife to help. Maybe she'd listen to her. That did not go well at all. When I explained everyone's concerns to my wife, she got mad and said Kathy was texting her all morning about how uncomfortable the other players were making her, and that we were bullies for it and should be ashamed of ourselves. Sparing a lot of details, my wife and I actually had a huge fight about this, but eventually cooler heads were able to prevail, and she agreed to stay in for all of next session. This is pretty much how that session unfolded. 1, Kathy's character tried to feed the remaining orc jerky to all the party members. 2, had a loopy fit and where in character she said the word penis 73 times. I was counting. 3, made creepy Hannibal Lecter noises to an NPC while telling them she was going to take their skeleton when they inevitably expired. 4, spent almost 20 minutes pleading with me to let her swap 2 of her character levels for sorcerer so that she could use some of the same spells that Mac was using. 5, tried to stab an NPC for not knowing where the closest tavern was. It was Leo that asked, not her. 6, stalked a tiefling through town because she wanted to make jerky out of him in broad daylight. 7, tried make a shrine from body parts she collected in a pew in a temple in the middle of service. 8, defecated on the altar when approached by town guards. It was at this time that my wife had seen enough to know who was really making who uncomfortable. We took a recess, and Kathy, my wife, and I all went outside, and my wife explained to her in very firm terms that she was not playing the game as anything other than a weird, fetishy horror movie of which no one else wanted to be a part of. Kathy didn't agree, but said she understood. The conversation lasted almost a half hour, and by the end of it, I tried, in my most polite way, to disinvite her from the game. It destroyed that particular session, but neither Kathy nor Dion came back to anyone's in the future. It must be noted that with 5-6 players in these sessions, with this level of disruption, we were not able to get anywhere near enough actual playtime as we were wasting on these shenanigans. I almost think that if the group was a little bit smaller, I could have cut the head off of this a little bit earlier, but it didn't work out that way. Fortunately, I still see Kathy at my wife's family events, and there is not any bad blood between us, but it really did sour me. So I told my wife that 2 more was too many, and we needed a screening process. End post.
Oh.
Holy moly, dude. That
Unfortunately, this is something that's like, as much as you might understand why there was a little bit more of a leeway in this scenario, maybe because of the autism, maybe not, but like that's not what autism is.
I was gonna
Like,
say
this
that
is a whole nother step.
None
of
of that. Like the only aspect I might say that
social
autism
cues
was again, yeah, the social ineptitude of being able to understand and register that what she was doing was affecting these other people in a negative way, in this way. And that's okay. Again, I would say I myself am on the spectrum a bit. Like we like to say, I have a bit of a touch of the tism myself. Like I do. But with this, I think we both do. And I've interacted with people who clearly have a bit of they also clearly have a touch of the tism. And their social awareness is severely lacking. But that doesn't make them bad people by any standards of measurement. But with her here, I will say, the fact that she was then talking to OP's wife and saying that they were the ones making her uncomfortable and bullying her, that leads me to feel like she was not necessarily as unaware of what was happening as maybe she would appear to be. It seemed like maybe she was much more conscious of all of her decisions than people might want to give her excuses for, because her again trying to flip the script for OP's wife, and her OP's wife believing her to such an extent where they got into an actual argument and fight about it. It's like, wow, like to me it felt like that was exceedingly manipulative on Kathy's part, where it's like, and that shows, if it's manipulative, then that shows that there is premeditation for it. She is aware, and she is deliberately trying to manipulate and fabricate the story to provide her with more support.
Yeah.
Especially when everyone else at the table, or the vast majority, are literally constantly telling her, hey, this isn't cool. And she's still choosing to do it. That is beyond just being socially unaware or inept. That is beyond that. That is legitimate disregard. And
the thing is, we read these stories, and it's one of those things of like, how, like, no offense, I understand giving people chances. That first session would have already been like halfway through. I would have been like, all right, we're done for today, and you're not coming back. I don't care if you're related to me or not. It's over. I'm not doing this shit. Like, this is fucking ridiculous. Because it is. This isn't even like there's no like, oh well, they don't understand social cues, so they're gonna be a little weird. This isn't weird. This is like
It's messed up. Is
disgusting
what it is.
is what it is.
It's nasty, messed up behavior.
It's one thing, if you're playing a lizard folk and they eat people, because that's what lizard folk do.
I mean,
And if your party's cool with it, fine. You don't have to describe every gruesome detail and what you do with everything.
That's what I mean. Like
you you play with it like it's a kind of a coy.
Because here's the thing. You also, though, if you're gonna play a lizard folk character, you also do though have to make it so that, okay, they are used to dealing with other societies and expectations.
Yeah, they're not going to do it openly.
They can't just start doing this thing. Like, they have to have some understanding that expectation, that their societal or their personal cultural thing, that is not something that is normally accepted or allowed if they're going to be adventuring and engaging with other cultures. It's like, you can't just do that. Or if you do, then you have to have your character be susceptible to being told, hey, you can't just do that like that.
Yeah, it's one thing if like you fight a group of bandits on the side of the road as you're traveling.
Yeah.
And everyone's like going through their pockets, and instead of going through your pockets, the lizard is starting to cut off the appendages.
Yeah, you rip off something and you just start, it's like, okay.
And like the party just looks at you like, hey, what are you doing?
That's a little
and you're just like, this is food. What do you mean?
Yeah. I'm not going to let this go to waste. Like,
that right there, the conversation you have right there sets the tone, right? Because if the party's like, well, he's not wrong, if someone in the party's like, no, you're absolutely not doing that, then there's a conversation we have. But if the party's just like, okay, but like, make sure you don't do that in certain places. And to be fair, you would understand that. It's one of those like, okay. And like, you can kind of be coy about it. And like, when everyone else is eating rations, you're chewing on someone's finger bones. Like, yes, it would be funny and kind of morbid, but you're not getting into the details and like making it gross.
Like,
if you sat there and
you're not being just straight up, again, homicidal to every freaking person around you.
Because like, also a lizard folk would know that they don't eat that. So like, you're not going to try to feed it to them. You're not, you wouldn't go out and tan human hide by, red eagling them in the back of your campsite. No one's going to let you do that, and you wouldn't do it. No matter how fucking crazy you think your character's going to be, because you're in an adventuring party.
Because
that's not
again, like at that point, yeah, it's like you are not, again, we literally just said this. Make a character that is conducive with the party. You cannot have them being constantly antagonistic and outright hostile and even homicidal to the party and everyone else around you. That's detrimental. Like, that is not a good character. That's not how that works. They have to be able to work with the party to some extent, and then inevitably more and more as time goes on. Yeah. No, you don't have to you can't have a character that might have some conflict. That's okay. But the point of that is for them to grow and to eventually work through that conflict. This is not that. This is her just literally being insane and crazy. Again, she clearly wanted to be like Hannibal Lecter and have a character
this is insane.
Like that.
Without even the tact of Hannibal Lecter. Because as much as Hannibal Lecter is gross, there's also a tactful intelligence.
Intelligent. He's a literal freaking genius, and he knows and he how to do what he's going to do. Like,
that's not what this is. And the reality is, like, it's one thing you look at, like, when someone plays like a barbarian from a tribe, and their first instinct is usually to kill and pillage and do these things, and like, that's fine, right? Because they express that. This, you might get into some sort of heated verbal interaction, and the barbarian starts to ready their weapons, and the party's like, no. Like, that becomes a learning moment for that character.
Exactly. Even if it doesn't, a point for them to grow. Even if they don't agree.
Even if the first time it happens, maybe the barbarian does manage to draw their weapon and go to attack them, and then like one of the party members stops it, or a guard steps in and stops it, and there's some sort of consequence for it. No one gets hurt. There is a learning moment. This is literally just being a psychopath.
I mean, like, exactly.
And like bringing it to a D&D table.
And I don't know why the GM again
let it happen for so long. This was three separate
not even let it happen, but like didn't like you just said, consequences. If she's gonna act like a homicidal maniac, then it's like, all right,
in jail.
Throw her in jail, execute, whatever. Like, again, there are literal things you can do. Like, he kept saying like they couldn't get anything done because having to deal with these shenanigans. And it's like, if she is okay, because here's the thing, right? You do it the first time. I'm a believer. Sam isn't necessarily, but I'm a believer. Everybody gets one, right? If you've never done it before, you've never played before, it's your first time, you're feeling excited, you're feeling whatever. I wouldn't necessarily agree with any of this. This stuff is weird, nasty, and messed up. And it's like, okay, but you know what? You're treating it kind of like a meme. So we'll have a conversation. The GM talked to her and told her, and then she said she understood, even though she didn't seem particularly receptive. Okay, fine. Next thing, when she starts doing the same stuff, nip it in the bud. It's done. She said she understood, but she's still going to repeat the same behavior. All right, you get a bounty placed on you. A literal bounty hunter shows up and he takes you out. Or you have a ton of guards who come, subdue you, and take your character away. They are gone now.
I mean, actually, like I've been playing through Dragon Heist, and
Ooh,
I love the
okay.
fact that there is a set rule of law.
Yeah,
It's because it's like, yeah, you can do messed up things, but like
there's a limit. You got yeah.
If you
for the consequences.
You know, sometimes it's a week in jail or community service, and other times it's like 6 months in a work camp, and it's like you're not going to see your.
I mean, I was going to say, anybody who has seen the D&D movie, Honor Among Thieves, where they start out in a literal jail at the edge of the world, you know, being put through. It's like, yeah, your character gets carted off to some obscure or some whatever. Like, and it's like, again, there are many ways. Like, again, I don't understand why the GM didn't put their foot down sooner. Like, again, after the initial first thing, after that first one where you're like, okay, she's showing some really problematic behavior. My players have also all come to me saying that they aren't cool with it. It's not comfortable. I have talked with her about this, and she said she understood and she received it. And the behavior is happening again. Put the kibosh on that right away. Like, crush that. For me,
you look at
out.
The first thing he listed. Stopped a funeral procession to harvest the lungs from the to-be-intended corpse. Why?
Here's the thing.
That's the first question to the DM is when they're like, I want to do this, I'd be like,
it's like, if you are, again, like we just said, like say you're a necromancer, or you're a quirky, you know, more barbaric race, a goblin, an orc, or whatever, but you're a necromancer, so you're a little smarter, you're more interested in the physiology of whatever. It's like, okay, that could be a quirky little moment where you're just like, excuse me, would I be able to maybe take some of that? If you're not going to use it, if all you're going to do is just burn it up, could I actually maybe just take it? I could make it useful again if nobody really cares. Like, that could be a funny kind of character trope, but that is a thing where it's like,
why are you choosing to do this here? There's ways you could do this, but wouldn't necessarily be noticed as much. But you're not even thinking that far ahead.
Because they might not think it as being even to the same homage of herself, right? If you are a bit of a socially inept individual and you're like, I don't feel like there's anything wrong. I'm just being logical. I'm just being factual. Like, I'm willing to recycle that body. You guys are just going to burn it up and turn it to ash, which is completely wasteful, but I could do something with it. Yeah. And like, you know, and then ask it. So again, you could make that make sense, but there's a difference between doing that and then again, doing like the second one is remove the kidneys from a gnome shopkeeper she killed because he refused to sell her an item. Like, again, as soon as she does that, that's like, okay, you just murdered somebody for no real reason. So that's a problem. You are now going to be on a bit of a problem list here. Like, as soon as she did that, I would have given her consequences right away. Like, I would have been like, okay, first off, why are you doing that is what I would have asked. And if she gives me a legitimate reason, then I'm like, okay, well, you do that. The guards come and you are now under arrest. Like, because you can't just delete somebody, an NPC, because you feel like it. Like, that's not how that works.
Yeah.
So that, in essence, everybody, again, if you have a person like this in your group, and maybe it's not to this same extent, but even if they're doing things like that, where they are constantly making shit detrimental for the party, they're being douchebags or assholes to NPCs, if they are constantly trying to like punch or hit or attack NPCs or other party members because they want to, or because they think it's funny, or because they think it's whatever, that is a problem that you should tell your GM about. And if they do not do anything about it, talk to your fellow players. And if they don't do anything about it, then you should talk, say your piece, and then leave. Because this is not okay behavior. anywhere. If you want to play, if they're playing a game that's all messed up like that, like I think we talked about a previous Cautionary Chronicles, where there was like kind of a post like that, where like this group of people was doing a lot of messed up, crazy shit, and they were having fun. It's like, okay,
Just go play Fatal.
yeah, go play
Look up
Fatal.
Fatal and
Don't
show
look
your
up
mom.
Fatal. Don't look it up.
Look
No.
up Fatal on
No,
the
just go.
family TV.
Oh God.
Like, because now they have like search engines. So just go.
Why
look up
are
there and
you?
show your
Stop it,
parents.
Sam. Stop that. No. Do not look it up on your TV. Look it up in the privacy of your own room.
Show your significant other.
On your
show
phone,
cousin
under the covers
well.
of your bed. You get into your bed, you throw the covers over yourself like you're 6 years old again, and you open it up. Make sure your door is locked. Make sure that you're in. Make sure that you are in private mode, or what is that mode called? Incognito mode. Make sure you're in there and look it up.
Go to your local game store. Go to a group of people playing D&D and go ask, have you ever played Fatal before?
No. Oh God.
And then go ask the person who works at the shop, and then you'll probably
if they have any editions of Fatal.
Oh
my God.
Yeah.
Moving on. We're gonna move on now. We're gonna move on from that.
I was thinking, Adam, I'll do the next long one if you want to take the wonderful one for the end.
Yes, absolutely. Feel free to take the next one.
Yeah, we'll finish off with one that leaves a smile on your face.
Yeah. So to wash the filth off, to cleanse your palate of the degeneracy. This next
one does have a essay warning. It's more implied essay.
Yeah, it's more of an implied thing. Nothing actually descriptive, so it shouldn't be too hard.
Just in case.
Yeah, just to be aware.
Albeit what we just talked about was way worse, but. It is titled, So I Had a Horror Story Come Back to Haunt Me. The essay warning is for implied essay in game and nothing involving real people and real essay, which is great. We love not having real stuff going.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Let's keep that streak going, you guys.
I prefer none of it, but here we are. At the time of the incident happening, I just shrugged it off and ignored it. Last night, it came back to haunt me. Before the COVID lockdowns, I was playing at a store close to where I lived. I was between campaigns, and so I looked for a group with a seat open for a player. Found one, and I joined. The campaign was going okay for a while when the DM decided to include a scene where my character was going to be kidnapped and later R-worded. I'm assuming I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, probably no. Defiled,
Defiled. Okay, that's
forced on, yeah.
Yeah. Now we had a session 0, and while sexual activities were fine, I had said that I wasn't interested in that sort of thing for me. No trauma in my past. I just didn't want to, since that's not the sort of thing I want in my fantasy RPG. I like that because they were
that's perfectly reasonable.
Like if you want to have
just do a fade to black.
Well, it's just like you can have those topics. I don't need like assault or things like that.
Yeah. No, again, I feel like this is a perfect thing of just like fade to black. You know what?
What a mature adult way to have that conversation.
I feel like a lot of these OPs that we have been reading about now have shown a vast amount of maturity. I'm very happy to see it. It's just unfortunate that they had to deal with this stuff.
So I argued with the DM, and the DM put his foot down and said, "This is happening. It's for the plot." I asked, "Why? Am I going to get pregnant? It's not up for that. I'm not up for that either, since we're months away from the big battle, and if my character is pregnant, I can't fight." Weird, but they responded with, "It was some ritual at a certain celestial event that we had to disrupt, but I can't remember the details." So it sounds like there was a lot of bullshit arguments.
Oh yeah, I mean, when you literally try to justify
me as a player, if someone said no, that's happening,
I'd be like, you can
find another person.
Yeah, you don't need my character for that, and you don't like part of the like again. Is it like okay? Is it like you said? If his parent is gonna get pregnant, it's gonna be like pregnant with like a demon or devil baby or something like that as like a means of a ritual or some crap like that. You don't need a player character for that. You can't, and even doing it with an NPC itself is still like, I get it. It's still problematic, but I get it. It's like, okay. And honestly, at that point, you could just make it, okay, she was willing though. She did that willingly because she is a cultist in that cult. And she did that willingly. You don't have to make it a forceful thing necessarily, but you don't like.
But let's continue. Arguments ensued. The other players sided with the DM. That's another red flag.
I don't understand how that's a fucking thing either.
I said nope, and I packed my stuff and left. As I was leaving, the DM was talking about the horrible things he was going to do to my character if I didn't come back, and I said whatever and kept walking.
That is the correct response. Do not give in to that kind of threat and provocation.
And so now we're going to fast forward to the time in between this person leaving and then playing a new game. Lockdown hits, and I'm playing online with the people who frequent the store across town that had recently opened up. Things are going well, and I don't think about the old table much, if at all. Lockdowns lift, and we finally all meet at the new store, and we keep playing. Our town starts a project to revitalize the downtown area, and rents of stores rise. The store that this happened at closes, and the owner decided to concentrate his attention to his other store 2 towns over, where the other college is at. So it sounds like the store that they were playing in was then closed, so they had to go back.
Yeah,
to
they had to go to a different store. Yeah.
Yeah. Last night I was sitting at the table at our current store waiting for my group to arrive and who do I see walking in? It's my former DM and some of the crew, as long as some new players.
I think it means as well as some new players.
Yeah, sorry. As well.
No, that was a typo on his part. So yeah.
He sees me and leers at me with an evil grin. You wouldn't believe the things I've been doing to your character.
Tell him, Dave.
Tell him, Dave. Names changed and all that. One of the new players looks embarrassed and mumbles, at least once a session he's doing something to her. Never knew it was someone's character. Sorry. So I feel bad for that person because they didn't really have context, but here we are.
I mean, that's probably better, honestly, all things considered. Like, it spares them.
Yeah, DM grins even more at me and says, what do you think about that? The response is wonderful. It's not my character you're doing that to. It stopped being my character the minute I put her in my bag and left. You're doing this to a figment of your imagination, not mine. Go away. At that point, my new DM comes in with the rest of the table in tow and got down to some good old hacking and slashing. Bro. They went to a table on the other side of the play area and started their session. At one point, yeah, we love this. At one point, we heard an, oh man, this is bullshit. And my former DM was packing his things in a huff and stormed out, and the rest of his table went with him. Later, I asked the store staff what was up, and they told me that they got complaints from other tables of the SA stuff that was being played out at his table, and they were asked to either knock it off or leave. My former DM got angry and opted for the latter option. Not really that much of a horror story, I know, but it's one that came out of nowhere to haunt me. This is the you're doing this to a figment of your imagination.
This is the epitome of exactly what you should respond when a douchebag like this.
Talk about rising up.
Literally, look, one of my, again, the top voted comment on this post is amazing too. Literally goes, you're doing this to a figment of your imagination is such an effing sharp insight on the situation that really cuts to the heart of this guy's whole problem here. Yeah. I am envious of just how hard that one cuts. Like, it is. Because again, people, I'm sorry to say, acolytes, sometimes you are going to have GMs who are going to try to hold your characters hostage for some crap. And even more so, maybe they won't even hold them hostage, but we as players feel like they are held hostage. Feel like, okay, if we leave the table, then we're leaving this character that we really love and appreciate, and we're leaving them to the absolute mercy and the horrors and degeneracy of these people. But that's not true. It's never true. And even if you feel that way, there are a couple of ways to make you feel again. Absolutely, I feel like the epitome is to go with this guy. When you take your sheet back, put it in your bag, that is your character with you. Whoever or whatever they're doing to whatever imagination there, that's not your character anymore. Mm-hmm. That's the whole point. That's why you left. That's not your character. It isn't. It's somebody that maybe looks like her. It doesn't even look like her anymore because you're not even there anymore. It's someone completely different. But here's another thing. If you are still worried about that, if you need something to maybe help you kind of get to that point, you can also, I've done it before too, where I've left that in my Cringe campaign, I was like, yo, my character sneaks off in the middle of the night when everyone else is sleeping and you never see or hear from him ever again. He is gone. Oh, my character, if you need to, my character, deletes out of somewhere. They go off and they disappear. Again, you never see them or they're just done, like whatever. You can literally say that as you're leaving. Be like, hey, y'all, I'm done. This is what my character does, or this is what happens to my character. And there you go. And that's fine too. Like, it doesn't matter, because again, at that point, they can say like, oh, no, it doesn't. You can't say that. I'm the GM. It's like, well, my character. I choose what happens to my character. They're gone now for whatever reason. Well, I bring them back. That ain't my character. My character is not willing to come back. So whoever you bring back, that ain't my character anymore. Yeah. And that is what we love to see and to hear. That is phenomenal. And everybody...
I absolutely love all of the just absolute dogpiling they're doing on this.
Yeah.
My favorite so far is like, yeah, this dude definitely spent his high school getting stuffed into lockers and ignored by women, which I know is a shitty thing to say, but like, it also makes me laugh because that's just like, yeah, dude, you're a misogynist and a weirdo with fantasy women because you can't have control in your regular life, so you take it out on.
Yup.
Yeah, it's gross, and like I hope that any of the people that play with this person, if they've seen this story, that they don't anymore.
Like it's
Because
so
like
crazy.
if you stick with someone like this, you to me you are in the same boat as them. Whether or not you do the same things, you allow it, which means you're in the same boat as them.
I mean,
Um,
well, again, if you're really okay with that kind of thing happening in such a petty way,
yeah,
where it's
then go fuck yourself.
yeah,
Sorry, but
what are you doing? Like,
I
how is
don't.
that?
Some people have pity for people like this.
Sure,
I
and it's okay
don't.
to have pity for me. And again, like I said, if a person is having some problems, and I would also say it does for plenty of people. Everybody has their own personal preference for like what they're willing to their tolerance for shit like this, right? And if you know a person is like going through some stuff or whatever, like for me in the Cringe campaign, all the stuff that was happening wasn't anything like this. When it got to that point, that was when I was like, I'm done. I can't. I'm not doing it anymore. There were plenty of other stupid stuff that happened all the time with taking control of certain character things or, arbitrarily screwing with the rules and shit without knowing it just for your benefit in dumb, stupid ways. And it's like, okay, you know what? I can potentially work around that if I'm having a conversation with you and saying, hey, do better, get better. This is not okay. This is not acceptable. This is not whatever. If like, do better. But the moment some shit like this happens and you confront that person, and again, like I said, here's the thing, right? If they're doing this because they're like, oh, well, I thought that this would just be a much more you know, intense, emotionally moving, plot development or plot hook where something like this happens, and it's like, okay, look, like we said, you said you need this for like a ritual or something. I understand you're trying to maybe do it for like shock value and stuff like that, but it's not okay to try to force this on a player. It's already questionable if you're trying to do this as part of the story itself, but I get it. Things messed up, twisted, dark things can happen. And we're okay with that, right? We see it in movies, we see it in books all the time. It's okay to have that as a means and a purpose of establishing like stakes and tone, like the dark tone. When you have like, people like stuff like that happens. Yes, and you're trying to provide it as a tonal shift or an emotionally again moving thing where like it prompts the players to want to stop this thing from happening. That's okay. That is okay. Bad stuff happens. Again, you don't have to be super descriptive about it. You don't have to like lay it all out, but you can be like, yeah, you guys know this particular cult of like, demon worshippers, devil worshippers, monster worship, whatever it is, they do really obscene, horrendous things to people. And, they will do this stuff because that is a thing that happens. And that is supposed to move the players to want to take action even more so.
Yeah. I mean, like, dude, dark storytelling is fine. Like, one of my favorite games I've ever played, story-wise, which it's not the strongest one, but in terms of, like, if we're talking shock value for story progression, was, like, Far Cry 3, if you ever played it. That game uses dark storytelling and weird,
Yeah. Dude, Far Cry
putting
3 is super dark. It gets
yeah,
real
but,
crazy.
Like, putting, like, a character in horrible situations, and then as a player, you have to figure your way out of it, is a great storytelling moniker, as long as it's a consensual thing with a bunch of people. And like D&D is not the same thing because it's not like you're playing a character that someone else wrote.
It's not a third person kind of thing
No,
where you are watching someone else's story.
No,
This is your story.
Yeah, this is the story you're creating, which is intrinsically different than playing a video game where there's already a story and you're just playing through what this character experiences. That's why, like, if you're going to do something like this, you'd have to use an NPC because you now are the one writing it. You're the one orchestrating the story. The players are just there to interact with the story, whether they can convince them to change their ways, stop it from happening, whatever. Also, you can make something high stakes and dark without it literally being gross.
That's what I'm saying. You can do it the right way. It's okay.
You could use human sacrifice as opposed to assaulting someone.
Or again, like I said,
things that aren't innately
consensual.
Yeah, or that. But like
be like they are trying to give birth to like the next, demon lord or or whatever. It's like make it a consensual thing. She
Well,
is
like
a cultist.
a bunch of that stuff could be off-screened.
That's what I mean.
The whole process of the sexual act is not necessary to be on screen. You could
Nope.
have like the birth could be a big deal, but like
Yep.
even then, you don't need to get graphic with it. You don't need to get
Nope.
gross.
You don't have to. It's
You
just, you know that this entity is being born now, and you're trying to stop this ritual. It's a ritual that's happening.
because it could be a big deal. Like you could still make it a big deal to your players. You don't have to add those little bits and like making people uncomfortable and abusing the player characters because that's a
No.
big no-no. And most of the time there is really no excuse for it or
None. Like there's just not really any except for your own personal glorified shit that is like fucked up, and you just need to just let it go, man. Again, you are supposed to be providing a fun, cohesive environment for everyone at the table. That is a GM's job. And if you're literally trying to do some shit, we're trying to like, it is almost never a good idea to ever try to take away, again, autonomy from a player. And if they start doing horrible things, well, you're not taking away their autonomy, but there are consequences for their terrible actions. You're not taking away their autonomy. They made those, you let them make those choices. Well, here comes the consequences of your actions now.
yeah.
And in here, it's just like, again, hey, you can't force a player to do something that they don't want to do without it being fair, logical, and understandable. You can't just basically be like, I take your character, there's no magic at play. Because again, any magic that works, like I think, again, Dominate Monster is the only spell that would allow that to really happen and work for a potentially extended period of time. Like I think Dominate Person is like an hour, and then like you can increase the length to I think like 8 hours, maybe. I think as you like you do a higher level thing, but it's also highly predicated on like, hey, if you damage that creature, I believe the effect is gone. If you do anything harmful to that creature, the effect or they can keep making saves to break out of the effect. Like there are caveats and very specific rules and mechanics for those kinds of scenarios. And you can never just arbitrarily, just randomly say, oh yeah, your character now does this thing. I am forcing your character to do this thing. This thing happens to your character without any chance for them to save, resist, or do anything about it. That's not how the game works. It never has, it never will. That's not how it is supposed to work. And people, again, need to understand that. But with that, let's go ahead. Let's move on to the last story that we have for today. Again, this is far more lighthearted, a real nice, sweet, funny, again, it's still kind of a horror story, but also not. It's a horror story in just the sweetest and funniest of ways. It's chaotic, and for good reason. You'll see. We're gonna go ahead and clean our palates with this one. So I GM'd for kids for the first time today. I volunteered to run a Pathfinder at a small convention in my area today, and the last game of the day had 5 kids under 10 years old playing. In 2 hours of play, the party spent the first 15 minutes conspiring to steal the reward money from the quest giver.
Love it.
2, the wizard spent 2 straight turns of combat trying to grab a goblin by the legs, then the hands, and finally the ears. Also, he could use him as an improvised weapon against other goblins.
Love that.
3, the druid renamed her animal companion at least 4 times. I think she finally decided on the name Daisy. 4, at one point, an angry mob charged the party to attack an NPC. The cleric just asked if he could just hug them.
that little kid is going places.
5, the wizard, in the middle of another combat, announced that he had to go do NPC things. He then just walked into a nearby wall over and over until it was his turn again. That one is the one that gets me.
I love kids, dude. Like, when they do stuff like this, it's so funny.
Why did he just for the memes? He's doing it for the memes,
also,
bro.
This wasn't in the game. He did this in real life, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I mean, I could believe it. That's the thing. I think I don't know. It could be interpreted as either. He could be like, yeah, I had my character just walk into a wall for a turn. Or he could be like, I'm going to go walk into a wall real quick. Like, that's the funniness of it. And finally, the last one. At one of the cons booths, you could make potions, i.e. buy tiny vials or beakers and fill with what I hoped was colored water because the kids were drinking them. The rogue insisted that the ones she had were invisibility potions that she could use on her character. I had to clarify that her inventory was what was written on her sheet and not just what she had sitting on it. Frustrating as it was at the time, I'd still run 10 of these games over my earlier one with adults who tried to torture surrendering enemies and went on weird rants about their job's vaccine mandates. Edit. Here's one more moment I remember. In the last combat, the wizard's first action was to try to pick up Druid's animal companion, Daisy, and throw it at the enemies. I, at this point, took the opportunity to demonstrate consent by asking Druid directly if she was okay with Wizard throwing Daisy. She said no, and I let the wizard know he'd have to do something else on his turn. He was fine with that and just bum rushed the mooks while spraying lightning everywhere, while Druid got to use her companion like a Pokemon. I waived rules as written to let her use all her actions to command her companion. A happy ending.
I love it. It's
adorable. Like, again, yes, is this chaotic? Absolutely. You're playing with a bunch of under 10-year-olds in this thing, but that is okay. It's all in the most innocent ways possible, where it's like, yeah, it's chaotic. You're probably not going to get a lot really done productively, but it's still fun.
It's good, honest fun, really.
Let them have some fun, you know?
I love the fact that this person like acknowledged that it was a lot, but also used moments in the game to teach them.
I'm sure it could be frustrating, yes, but it's still just like, it's hilarious too. Like, he just like goes, again, the one that gets me every time, the wizard in the middle of combat,
I have to go do NPC stuff.
Announce he has to go NPC. I love that. That's amazing. And then he just goes and walks into a wall over and over again until it was his turn. That is so ridiculous. That is the dumbest shit.
That's the internet generation for you.
That is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. I love it.
I love that people just started, what's it called? Telling stories of other games that they've ran for like kids.
Yeah.
My favorite one I found was I did a one shot for my nephews once. They were 6, 8, and 12 at the time. I had them doing a quest to rescue a little boy's sister after they came across and dispatched a goblin trying to carry him off in a burlap sack. So they were like informed about this quest when they found a goblin or whatever it is.
Yeah.
She informed the party that she was being held prisoner by goblins residing in a nearby cave system. To make it more exciting, every one GP of loot got them a penny of IRL money. There was about $10 worth of loot to be had. They did very well and managed to defeat an ogre, find $8 worth of loot, and use a sneaky entrance in the prison to rescue the girl without disturbing the main living quarters of the base. When they took her back to the village, everyone came out to thank them and threw a huge feast in their honor, and the 6-year-old tried to give me back the $2.50 of the IRL money he amassed, saying it was for the villagers. Like, that's the kind of thing, is like, you know, you do stuff like
those
that.
Opportunities with those kids who are like legitimately wanting to be heroes. Oh my god,
that's the funny thing. Like, you know, playing D&D as an adult, there are times where like I think, you know, my DM forgets that some people actually like helping other characters, and like, you know, we had an instance of like we had to build a refugee camp ostensibly. And like I had 2 different characters that were in the story at the time. I'm using one of them to build big outer walls of stone so we could like keep the camp protected from the elements, and like we were using spells to create food and water, and I was like putting down thousands and thousands of gold for like supplies. And he's like, "Why are you doing that? You could use this money to buy weapons." I'm like, "I don't need that."
Yeah, I got plenty of weapons already. What you mean? They need it.
What do you mean? I'll sell a couple of them. I have to. Like,
and I would love to take this moment to say too, if players, GMs, if players do this, right? You don't necessarily have to have like maybe like a try and true system for it, but have maybe like, again, like we talked a little bit about before, have like a Paragon system, or have like an affinity system kind of in place.
Or just have them be known for it.
That's what I mean. They do good things, their reputation increases, and that can maybe give them more benefits down the line, such as maybe giving them even though they spent gold on these people, have it down the line. Maybe some generous benefactor provides them with weapons because they've heard of them and they want to help, like, offer support to the party, or make it that they get discounts at other places for their good deeds, or anything like that. Give them benefits for
we
their
do it in real life.
altruism.
Like
Yeah.
it's funny because we literally do this in real life. You look at like I'll use an example. The NFL has an award every year given to a member of one team that does the most community work. Now
Yeah.
these people make a bajillion dollars. These people make a stupid amount of money for the
They
most
certainly
part.
can. They certainly can.
Even like middle players still make more money than most of us are ever going to see. And the reality is like we look at these people as like hometown heroes because they go into these places and they have a bunch of money and they're like, I want to give back. And
Yep.
it's so simple as to just I want to give back. The D&D PCs, especially once they're successful, are kind of like these celebrities and
They
hero
are.
athletes,
Well,
and
they are literal heroes. They are
yeah.
legends.
And
Like,
so giving them opportunities to do stuff like this, even if it's unexpected for you as the DM, you don't have to reward it in the traditional sense of, well, now you get to do these things. But like doors will open to them, people will be nicer to
you
them. People
become
will,
famous. Like,
like it's not something that I think is usually explored in a D&D campaign because
I agree. Not
the
enough.
emphasis is on story, but having bits and pieces there where you can give them opportunities to do stuff like that, you'd be surprised what people will do. The same way we talk about all these people who like want to murder people and tear them apart and be terrible, there are equally a lot of people who I think may enjoy the battle and gory details of a D&D session, but also want to help the people around them because that's kind of what life is in the society that you've created, and that's a cool thing. Like, yes, hardships of war and fighting are a real danger to your party, but going home and making sure that the local farms have enough food for the winter and helping them, people not live off the street it's like a huge cool positive aspect of a campaign that you don't know you're going to have until you let the opportunity arise. And
exactly.
of course it takes a bunch of 8-year-olds to tell you that.
Literally, honestly, I feel like it's always the case, right? Because we as adults, we always get so gummed up and stuck in certain ways and ways of thinking, and making everything a lot of the time far more complicated and complex than it actually maybe really needs to be. And you have some kids who come in, they're just like, no, I mean, I want to give it back because, like, I don't need it, and they, I want to do something good for them. And you're just like, holy shit, dude. God. It is super unfortunate how, like, a breath of fresh air that is. Like, how like it should be a much more common thing, but you're just like, that is so sweet. And you're like,
Yeah,
yes.
I love it. It puts a smile on your face.
And you know what? With that, that's exactly where we want to leave off for today, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
With the smile on our faces. We hope you guys enjoyed. If you stuck with us this long through all of our these little stories and tales and our constant rants, we appreciate it as always. We hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you guys next time when we dive back down into the archive. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Take care.